So one of the most important things you need to be able to do to solve problems with mechanics of materials is to be able to draw a free body diagram. And what is a free body diagram? Well, it's a diagram that shows you all the forces, moments that are being applied to a body. And it's called a free body diagram because you're freeing the body from whatever supports may be attached to it. And that's very important. You can't have a bunch of things attached to the body in the free body diagram because then it's not a free body and you're not able to analyze, hey, what forces are being applied to specifically this body. So how do we do this? One, we want to draw an outline of the body. That's the first thing we want to do. We don't want to draw like a stick or anything like that. We want the outline because it can get confusing if you don't do that. Then we want to add any applied forces that we know of. Then, if there were supports attached, we want to replace the supports with the forces that those supports apply. I'll show you an example so that makes more sense, but basically, no supports are going to be attached to our free body, just forces. And then the fourth thing we do is we're going to add internal forces and moments if we're looking inside of a body. So if I have like this expo marker and I apply a force to it and I want to see, hey, what forces are going on inside the expo marker. If you remember from statics, and if not, I'm going to make some videos on that as well at some point, but you can cut through the expo marker, our body, and see what's going on inside of it, and those would be the internal forces that we need to pay attention to. So for instance, if we wanted to look at the tabletop here and analyze what forces are going on with the top of the table. So all this in green, this entire surface, and we want to make a free body diagram for it. So first, what we're going to do is draw just the table. And I put the part that we're looking at in green to show you that we're not looking at the legs of the table. So we'll draw our tabletop. So like that's our tabletop, very simple. And now we're going to, or let me add an applied force as well. So maybe we have some force P acting right there. So now on our free body diagram, we're going to draw P as well, because that force is being applied to our tabletop. Now we've removed supports also, so we need to add the forces attached to those, associated to those. So maybe we'll name each of these A, B, C, and D. So we'll name this the force from A, name this the force from B, this the force from C, and this the force from D. The situation's kind of weird because it's in 3D, but we know that that's like underneath, kind of. And now we're going to look for any internal forces. In this case, there's not really any. So that's our free body diagram of the tabletop. So that's how you would do that. Here is a more relevant example that you could pop up. This would probably pop up in statics. But if we're looking at a beam like this that is pinned here, so it can rotate, but it also is being supported by this chain, and there's a force being applied to its end. So we're going to draw a free body diagram of this beam. So I kind of drew this pretty big. Let me shorten it up so we have some more space. Also, a quick note, whenever you see like these slanted lines, that usually means that that's a fixed base. which means that it can't move. Um, yeah, and it can provide like infinite normal force, basically. So we're going to draw our free body diagram. First step, we're going to draw an outline. Draw our outline of our body. Now we are going to draw the applied force. Applied force is P. Now we're going to draw our support forces. So we know that we have a force in this direction from this chain, right? So here, let's call this A, point A, call this B. So we'll call this F from B. However, we also have support forces from this pin. This pin can't provide a moment, if that makes sense. Since this thing can rotate and the pin can't stop it from rotating, it can't provide moment. That's what we know. But what it can do is stop it from moving this way or moving down. So there's both a horizontal force here and a vertical force. We don't know the magnitude of either one though. So we'll call this FA in the X direction. We'll call this FA in the Y direction. So those would be all our support forces. And the reason why we have to do it in components here is because we don't know the magnitudes of these yet. But here, we don't know the magnitude of this either, but we know its direction overall. It has to be in the direction of this chain. That's the only way the force can be applied. So that's why we draw one line here, but two arrows there. And then we think about, are we looking inside the beam? We're not, so we're not going to have internal forces. So this would be our whole free body diagram for this beam. Finally, we have an example where we want to see what's going on in the beam at this location B, which is like, let's say halfway through the beam, right? So we're going to draw a free body diagram of one. We get to choose, but we're going to choose a half of the beam to do a free body diagram of to figure out, hey, what's going on inside. We can choose either one. Either one will grant us the correct answer. But why don't we do both? So let's do a free body diagram of BC first. So do that there. I like to put little break marks here. Looks like we broke the beam. So this is BC. Let's draw our applied force. We have P. Then we're going to see if we have any support forces. We don't. There's no support actually attached to BC. It's just the rest of the beam. That doesn't count. So no support forces. And now we got to look at our internal forces because we actually have those. So we have, in this case we won't, but we could have a internal normal force or axial force, we'll call N. We could have a shear force as well. We will have one in this scenario called V. And then we could have an internal moment as well that we call M. So those are always going to be our internal forces. Whenever we're looking at a beam, there could be normal force inside the beam, shear force inside the beam, or an internal moment inside the beam. And we're going to talk more about normal and shear a lot. And we're going to talk about all three of these, but just keep those in your mind. Normal force acts down the axis of the beam. Shear force is perpendicular to that. And then the moment, it's just moment in the beam. So this would be our free body diagram for BC. You can also draw it for AB. And if we had actual numbers associated with this problem, we'd see that it actually gives us the same answer. So we've drawn AB, draw our applied forces. There are no applied forces directly on AB, actually, so don't have to worry about that. Then we are going to draw our support forces. There are support forces here. So there's going to be a support in the y direction, support in the x direction, so I'll call that FAX, FAY, and then there could also be a support moment because this is a fixed support, it's not a pin support. So it can resist rotation, which means that it can have a moment. So I'll just draw this over here just because I'm out of space. Call that MA. Those are all applied in the same area. I should have created more space, but those are our support forces and moments. And then we can also have our internal moments and internal forces. So we can again have normal force N. We can again have shear force V. And we can also have internal moment M. You see, when we get all these internal forces, it can start to get a little bit cluttered, but yeah. But that's the whole idea with doing free body diagrams. It's incredibly important when you're trying to solve these problems to do this. It'll save you from so many mistakes that it's worth taking the extra minute to do it. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.